Hi, everyone. I'm Lydia. I'm an artist on the Space Anemone label. Today, I'm happy to be chatting with Sunrise Transparence. They are a performer as well as composer, producer, and audio engineer. We're talking about their recent project that has generated some buzz called Salvation is Created. It is a 100-piece orchestral work where they play all the parts. It premiered about a week ago on the Space Anemone YouTube channel, and there were some questions, so today they're going to be answered. So let's start with the basics. What was the inspiration for the project?
So this piece, it's kind of got a long history for me. I first played it in high school band, and it really struck me at that time just the amount of beauty and emotion contained in the music there. And then I played it again with the UCLA Symphonic Band, and again I was reminded of this beautiful texture, the emotion through the texture. Texture is just one of my favorite things in music, and what most interests me about playing with large ensembles like that, all the different textures and colors that are available. And during quarantine, or social distancing, however you want to call it, as we were all sort of at home doing different things, I decided to do some research and to sort of deepen my understanding of music therapy and sound healing and different ways that music can be used for healing and mindfulness and those type of things. And in my dive in research, I came across the famous 1970s study by Dr. Helen Bonney and Dr. Walter Ponke. It was a study on music and psychedelic therapy, and they had a list of music recommendations at the end of it for what you should use, during an experience like this. And I noticed that this piece was recommended for mid-peak music, and I was like, wow, yeah, this piece is really impactful. It has such a deep emotional aspect to it every time I've played it. So then I had to go listen to it. I searched it up online, and I was listening to different performances of it, and I may have cried, and it just really made an impact on me all over again in the midst of social distancing and quarantine.
Wow, that's interesting. So you kind of have a long history with this piece.
Yeah. For me personally, and then I also, the story behind it is really inspiring to me. The composer Pavel Tchesnokov, he was a Russian composer. He was a church musician, and it was one of the last sacred pieces that he wrote before the Soviet crackdown on religion and religious expression and those type of things. So he never heard it performed. And it was kind of struck a personal note for me because I have a lot of family members that were living under that same regime, all the oppression and suffering that really went on under that. And the idea that this piece, it was originally a choral piece, and the lyrics are, "Salvation is created in the midst of the earth, O God." And that just really struck me. Like, how can you say that and mean that in the midst of, all of this oppression and everything that's going on, still holding on to the faith in God and, hope that God is doing something here on the earth as broken as it is. So that really hit me. So I also wanted to keep practicing my instruments because, performing gigs and, with ensembles isn't really happening anymore right now. So wanted to keep playing, keep playing all my different instruments, and this piece was it.
Cool. So as far as the context for the piece, I noticed one thing, which is that it's a classical wind orchestra project, and it's kind of different from your usual Sunrise Transparence stuff. So how does it fit in with those other projects?
So just for a recap, for those who may not be as familiar with my previous Sunrise Transparence work, so I've been doing this project, Sunrise Transparence, for a few years now. I have 4 albums. My sort of signature sound is this live, looping, improvised, multi-instrumental sort of texture music, kind of ambient, but sometimes it gets a little intense. It's not like your usual ambient. It explores the meditative states as well as struggles. So it's got a lot of like really visceral sort of emotions that are coming out through it, struggling with sort of these big picture, like existential, like being, living kind of questions, and like conscious versus subconscious narratives, frameworks, all that sort of thing. So during quarantine, I kind of felt called to make something that was a little more structured to help folks explore these things and work through the isolation, frustration, unhappiness, disruption that's happening in this time. So I made these 2 weekly series. They're guided meditations and breath work with live multi-instrumental sort of accompaniment to facilitate that. And this project, The Salvation is Created one-person wind orchestra, it's kind of a continuation of that for me. It's facilitating mindfulness in myself as well as hopefully in those who listen. Such a meaningful, reflective kind of piece. It kind of points to the transcendent and also just gives us space to just be for a little while. And the process for me was kind of meditative too, like gradually building up the layers, honing it in over the months that it took to put it together.
Yeah, I agree. It does feel really transcendent. So how did you learn all these instruments?
That's a common question. Well, I started learning to play music as a child in elementary school. I started with piano and recorder, I know a lot of you probably played that in elementary school. When I was in 6th grade, I was able to join the school band, and I was really excited about that. I had been wanting to do it for years to, dive in deeper into this whole music thing. And unfortunately, I got tired of my first instrument. It wasn't a great fit for me. And the next year in 7th grade, I switched to the oboe. I played that for a few years. And then when I got to high school, there was so many more opportunities, different places I could play music, different bands. The regular like school band, but then also like the pep bands for the sports games, and the pit orchestra for the musicals that we would do, jazz band, just all kinds of stuff. So I kept exploring more instruments, and that's actually when I first started playing brass instruments, which is now sort of my specialty. But so that was cool, branching out to a new family, and even beyond, like going further in my education and my sort of life as a musician, just always been interested in all these different how they work, what kind of sounds they make, what's possible to do with them, how are they similar, how are they different, as a composer and also as a music educator, which I'm sure some of you on this call are also as well, your teachers, and it's great to be able to have experience with each of those different things.
Yeah. So was there any one instrument that was like specifically more difficult, or were they all kind of difficult, or what?
Well, trombone is my main one. So, what you're more familiar with is a little easier to put together. But I wanted to really do the whole orchestra. So I had to dig out some instruments that maybe I haven't been playing as much lately. So, it was a process. I will say that the last 2 that I did was the flute and the cornet. The part is actually written for cornet, not trumpet, and I have a cornet, so I was like, let me do it on cornet. So the highest one of each family, the woodwinds and the brass, so I guess I'm just kind of a middle, low resonance kind of person. That's just what speaks to me more. But I think they all turned out great, and it was rewarding to finally, knock those out.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's talk more about the technical stuff. What software did you use? How did you edit the tracks in the video? Like, what was your workflow like?
So as far as software, the audio is recorded in Ableton Live, and the video was then edited in Premiere. So pretty standard as far as that goes. As far as my workflow, so first practicing, that was probably the most time-consuming part. And then recording the audio and the video, so having my mics and my camera set up. And I did about 3 or 6 takes for each part of the music, depending on, how I thought it might sound good orchestrated later. And then I, recorded all these takes. There was like ridiculous amount of takes. And then after I finished all those, then I had to separate the brass and the woodwinds and make sessions with those, like separate files to work with them, because there was too many. My computer couldn't run them all at the same time. So I listened to the audio, all these different takes, figure out which were the best takes, kind of clean it up, any external noises, or, I'm recording at home, so, neighbors or just sounds that happened. Making stems for each part, export the stems, then make a giant mix session with all the different stems and sort of create the final mix, particularly in that stage looking at specific panning and then impulse response reverbs, to sort of make it feel like you're in an actual ensemble, not just a random stack of, 104 random instruments. So I export that, brought all the videos into Premiere, time aligned them, resize them, position them on the screen, put on the masks so, you're not seeing the extraneous sides of the frame. And yeah, it was a process. And for both the audio and video, I had to break them into multiple sessions because I couldn't load everything at the same time.
Wow. So what did you have in the headphones then? Was it like a click track? Was it a click and drone? Or were you using a reference recording?
So that's a really good question. I think it's really important to use the reference recording, especially on something that's so texture-based and, there's a lot of blend concerns. So I had a reference recording. I had click with it in certain like key or really exposed parts where I really wanted to make sure that, what I was doing was locked in. But I didn't have it throughout because I wanted to kind of find a balance between being able to make my own expression and then still having it be a polished sort of final result. And the reference recording, actually, I only had it in for the first, 30, 40 layers of recording. And then after that, I got rid of it and I just listened to what I already had so I could, build on that from the bottom up and creatively respond in my own way to, the piece.
Yeah. Okay. So just the first 30 to 40 layers. Totally fine. What about mics and camera? What did you use for those?
So the mics, I recorded every take with 2 mics. So I had the sort of room mic, or a little bit, a few feet away from me mic, was the large cap condenser AKG C414. It just gives a lot of nice detail to the sound, and especially with the brass instruments, if you just only have a really close mic, it can sound a little weird because we never have our ear in the bell of the instruments. So a slight amount of space to dissipate and sound like a real person is kind of nice. And then I also had just a regular like Shure SM57 as a close mic. And then I combined those two together for each take to sort of get a good mix of the fine details with, enough present body in the sound so that, it's already enough to have all this audio going on. Like, I want to manipulate it as little as possible after the fact, so. And then the camera was just my phone. I didn't have anything fancy, so. I didn't actually have a tripod. I ordered a tripod, but with all the mail delays, it didn't make it in time. So, yeah, camera balancing on a music stand.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite part of the process?
Well, it was a long process, but I think if I had to point to like a certain moment that really was like the payoff and was like, okay, yes, I'm going to keep working on this thing, it would be like after I recorded each new batch of takes, like a new part, like, horn 2 or whatever it was, and then listening back and hearing this ensemble like start to grow. You start from just one lone line, that's it, and then, you get like a duo, a trio, and each one, it just gets so much richer, and building that layer cake of an ensemble, just, it really was a moment to connect with the vision of what I was seeing with it amidst all the nuts and bolts kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I have two more questions for you left. So, do you have any suggestions for those who are looking to create this kind of video with their students, like during distance learning?
Well, the number one thing would be to record to a click. That, that may or may not feel intuitive, but it's really important because even if you have really talented students and they're like, no, I know how the piece goes, like I can keep my own tempo, nobody's that perfect. And since you're not hearing the other people in the ensemble as a way to sort of like gauge yourself and react to them, since each person is recording in their own space or their own place, they really kind of need that. So a few things with the click: have it going the whole time. I know I said, it's nice to not have it the whole time, but for a project with the students, it just saves so much frustration for everyone involved to just keep it going throughout. And include that reference track with it so that, especially for something that's sort of texture-based or chorale or, something really lyrical like that, because they need a reference to train their ears and train their playing to match, the intonation, the texture. What am I doing in the piece? Like, am I a harmony line? Am I the melody line? Like, what's going on here in the piece? And so that they can sort of get the feeling of responding to the ensemble. And then one other thing with the click track is it will save everyone a lot of time and stress to include at the beginning of the click track a cue for them to clap at the beginning before they start playing. So that will allow you to align the video and the audio later, when you go to put together all the different performances. So what I recommend is you actually record yourself saying it on the click track. So at the beginning, it's starting. So you say 1, 2, ready, and clap, 2, here we go. And then they start. And you can tailor that to what you want. But the main point is just narrating what they're supposed to do. Because otherwise, if you say clap on the second measure of the click, the students aren't going to know what that means. And they're going to be confused. And they're going to be like, teacher, like, did you mean like the second whole measure of the performance? Or like, is it after the second measure? Or, so it just saves a lot of back and forth to narrate it so they know exactly where it's supposed to go. If they just listen to it once, it's sort of self-explanatory. And just have them keep their recordings running the whole time because, even if they only play at the beginning and then they wait for a long time and then they play again at the end, it's going to be hard to get that end part to line up. So even you can say like, okay, like if you're resting, like that's okay. You don't have to do anything fancy. It won't be shown, but just keep it going so that the timing lines up.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you've worked out pretty much all the issues with every part of it. So, so this project's really taking off. I'm told it's actually the best performing video on the channel for Space Anemone so far. So what's next for you?
There's two things that I'm really excited about that will be coming out very soon. I've already started on another one-person ensemble. This one isn't the full wind orchestra concert band. It's a brass ensemble. So all the brass instruments with a special feature on the trombones, but everything from tuba all the way to the trumpets up at top. And it's a brass ensemble. It's an original arrangement that I made, so I'm really excited about that. I think it does the song a lot of justice. It's a song from a band that a lot of us listened to a lot in high school, so that's all I'll say for now. You'll have to stay posted, and I'll be sending out some little teasers and stuff as that gets closer. And then the other thing is I have a new album releasing soon in a couple weeks, actually on January 21st, which is an ambient collab with Lost Chocolate Lab, which is Damien Kaspar, who I kind of collab with as Sunrise Transparence. And it's going back to sort of my live improv, layered, sort of live layering kind of textural music. And it includes several instruments, including the sackbut, which, if you don't know about it, is the Renaissance ancestor of the trombone. It's a brass instrument that maybe everyone isn't that familiar with, so it's kind of nice to include. Um,
Cool. That's exciting.
yeah, I'm very excited to have all these things coming out. What about you? You're working on some cool stuff too.
Yeah. Well, so as part of Lucid Space Dreamers, we just released a musical project called Aliens, and it explores outer space and things like analog warmth. And you and I are working on a short film, and that collab is sort of about the disconnects in communication. And I'm actually in it playing a like 40s film actor.
Beautiful
So I'm really
performance.
stoked on that because you're doing the sound design. And yeah, those things are happening soon. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, I think that's our time actually. So thanks to everyone who's joining us and anyone watching in the future too. It was really great to learn more about the project and how you made it. So yeah, for everyone watching, feel free to keep in touch. You can follow us on the socials that we'll put up on the screen. And thanks for joining us.